I always say to our team, understand our context, understand our history, because those are the things that actually, instill our passion for what it is we do. That's why we're here. Our settlements, understand those in and out, because actually we've got to protect those with all of our might. Understanding all of the redress, what was negotiated, how it was negotiated, why it was negotiated, because actually in all of the mahi that we do, we've got to make sure all of those things are upheld by practice.
Nau mai, hara mai, ki tēnei o ngā ui e pāna ki tō tātou nei iwi me ngā toru tekau. Tau e maumahara i ngā mahi e pāna ki tō tātou nei iwi mō te tutukitanga o te take Raupatu. Welcome, Donna Flavell, our CEO for the iwi. It's our privilege to be able to have this moment to have a conversation really about some of the challenges and opportunities and reflections of the last 30 years of the settlement. So I wanted to start with asking you, taking you back to when you first got involved with the tribe. What were you doing and how did you get involved with the tribe?
What was I doing? I was actually at law school. So I was actually brought up, so if I go back a little bit, I was actually brought up in Murupara, and then I came to school at Ngāroa Wāhia, and I guess at that time, Ngāroa Wāhia did a lot of mahi at the marae, so you got to see all of the kind of political debates and discussions that happened, during that time, being right in the heart of the kaupapa, the kingitanga, and so I guess during that time you got to hear and see a lot, and then of course have that reconnection back to the iwi. I think during that time too there was a big resurgence around te tiriti. You had the land marches, you had treaty settlement conversations or discussions around resolving historical issues with the government, our te reo Māori, the kohanga reo movement. So you saw all of those things happening around us. So I guess I was at that point in time during my high school years, got to be around all of those kinds of big political debates and discussions. And so that kind of drove my passion. At Ngāroa High School, I went to Ngāroa High School. So during that time, we were probably one of the first cohort of Māori students that actually decided we're going to go to university.
And in that cohort of students, when you look around at work colleagues or peers now, who were you going to school with at the time and how many of you went to university?
Oh, there was quite a few of us. One was Shane's sister, Anna Rose. So Arnie came back from St. Joe's and we ended up doing her last year at Ngāroa High. And so I got to know Shane through Arnie really. And then from there, my passion to law. So it's all Shane's fault. I blame him. He kind of, in terms of the work that he was doing for the iwi at that time too. And I guess just in terms of the drive and passion around some of the issues, even for our rangatahi at school. So, Arnie was there, Kahu, Tukere, Cherie, Gibson, we ended up flatting together. Ikemoki and they were kind of our juniors a little bit, believe it or not. So Ikemoki and all of those guys were around at the time. Yeah.
And it wasn't a popular pathway coming through high school and going on to university. So I would have imagined that you'd have to have had a strong group of support around you all?
Yeah, there was a strong group. I guess for us, because, we missed also the reo rumaki reo cohort. So that was Toti Kupa, that was Taipu. So my other good mates were Nahia Turner, who is now Nahia Raumati, Te Rānui Heroini, who was a really good mate of mine at the time. So, you have all your good friends, and Te Anapaki. So they were kind of our great friends, along with Tina Hill and Tony Thompson. So that was kind of our crew with different mates. And having all of this, them being around, being very local and right in the depths of it, I got to, we had some good times during during my high school years. And it wasn't a popular thing going to university. And like I said, that was a real tough time too, because we had missed the real support network. So we kind of had to fight our way through the system.
And did you receive a scholarship from the Tainui Māori Trust Board at that time?
Not at that time, because, I was lucky enough, the fees were free. And I think it wasn't until my third or fourth year that we started getting, having to pay for our fees. And so it was only then I think I applied for a scholarship in my last year.
Mm. And in terms of your law career pathway, what type of law did you kind of venture into?
I went into more around the tile, environmental, te tiriti space. I did a bit of commercial, and I probably done better on the commercial side than I, in terms of the land law. So I went more the land law, tile, international environmental law, te tiriti and Māori land. Yeah, I did all of those papers.
And when you graduated, what then? What happened?
Before I graduated, I actually, through Shane, he pretty much, they were looking for a team to come together to help. And basically, I got called up to go and see RTM, so Sir Robert Mahuta, who was at the time needing some, arms and legs to do some mahi. So I graduated just before the 95 settlement. So I remember that day, I was probably my second to last year of law school, and, a lot of our law students at the time all wanted to go there to see the significant signing. And of course, we were lucky enough to be around as well. So we got to see what it was like. We had a lot of fun outside the gates, including some of our fellow law students. And then we had a lot of fun inside the gates celebrating. So it was quite a historic day, but, in my mind, just seeing the events that transpired that day, in my mind, was quite significant for iwi katoa.
That visual of those who were inside the gates and those who were outside the gates, how did that make you feel at the time?
Went straight away to the positive end, I think, and listening to some of the kōrero, particularly around, we determining what our own future would look like. Those are the types of things that kind of really stuck in my mind around, the courage and the leadership that it took to even get to that point. And so for me, I saw it as a positive thing, for iwi generally, and as I reflect on it now and in the current day context, the leadership and the courage that it took to actually put a stake in the ground to actually finalise and negotiate a settlement. It was a starting point, in my mind, but it meant that actually we could determine our own futures. And that was a really, I think for me, a critical moment and point in time in our history.
I imagine that there would have been quite a robust debate happening at university at the time with the whole settlement fiscal envelope scenario. Can you take us back to some of those conversations?
There was very much hearty, and people were divided, right? So there was lots of division about whether it was a good thing or not, whether it was whether we were kupapa or, let's take a stand. And so in my mind, I saw it only as leadership and pure courage and determination and, having a vision about actually we can determine our own future and what that looks like in a much more positive way than what was happening around us at the time.
So just before you finished your law degree, you were taken into the office of Sir Robert and had a bit of an interview. How did that conversation go and what job did you end up getting?
Yeah, it was pretty straightforward, real quick, had a bit of conversation about what I studied, and like I said, who are your parents, which marae, and what my interests were. My first task was around the harbours, West Coast Harbours claim. So, and then of course all the mahi that huakina as our environmental arm of the iwi, Tainui Māori Trust Board, so Huakina Development Trust, so that was mine. And so I connected with all the whānau back at, with Waiuku and Ngāti Tiata and Ngāti Nāneko.
And do you think he gave you the West Coast Harbours because of your Ngāti Tiata connection and the Manukau claim?
Very much so. And even from there, with all the work that we were doing around the research and the mahi I'd done on that, it was just easy because you had those relationships.
And who were you working with around that time for the harvest?
So that was actually Tipper. So Tip and I were doing a lot of the research. So we did a lot of archive, did a lot of searches up at the Auckland Archives and Rangima, Rangima Huta.
And who gave you guidance around the type of mahi you were expected to do?
Mostly Rangima and Shane. So between Shane and Rangima, that's kind of where we got our direction from. And then having to write reports back to RTM, to the boss.
And in terms of initiative and mentorship and encouraging you to, use all the skills that you had gained at university, did you ever get kind of guidance, or were you left to your own devices? Or?
No, I think we were lucky too when I reflect on that, because we had a lot of old people at the time too. So, we were really lucky where we had people you can draw information from. So, the ones who were like staunch advocates like Auntie Naneko and Carmen and Rangima, they were really knowledgeable and skilled, and they knew their stuff, but they were also strong advocates. So, we were lucky enough to be able to learn from all of their wisdom, the old people's wisdom in terms of some of the mahi. So at the time when we come in, we also had the water care hearing and the water care application to actually take the pipeline for the new pipeline because of the Auckland drought. And so we ended up doing all the interviews for the hearings at Tuako Hall.
And what do you remember about what people were saying about water care coming down and taking water from the Waikato River?
There was first, just the water being taken up to supply Auckland, when there were so many concerns around water quality and the exchange of our wires being transferred from one place to the other, and not being in a good state to be able to supply Auckland. So there was big concerns around that. There were concerns around actually the physical aspects of the pipe and where they were proposing to put the pipe, because of the caves that were there for, some of our tupuna who were buried in the caves. So there was lots of kōrero around the significance and the tapu of the place of where the pipe was going to be laid. And then, of course, the environmental concerns about water quality and supplying even our whānau who are going to be up in Tāmaki with water that was not good quality.
Mm. And in terms of the importance that the iwi placed on gathering this information and who knowledge holders were, how did you determine who was being interviewed and who to go to for the information? A
lot of it was many of the kaumātua that actually lived in the area. So a lot of the ones from the marae, a lot of the ones who actually had very close relationships and whakapapa to the whenua that was there. And I think when I look back on it, there was a long list. So we did lots and lots of interviews from different ones around their knowledge and their knowledge base, but a lot of it was about just the concerns that they had about the development, the length of time, whether or not it was actually going to just be for the drought, because the amount of work that was going into it looked like it was going to be more of a permanent structure. So some of the concerns around that. So people had different views and offered different context to what was going on and what we saw as the development. So, in my mind, together, all of that evidence that was pulled together, whether it was cultural, relationship, technical in terms of the environmental concerns, but also the wāhi tapu and the connection to the place of where the proposed pipe was going to be put, all come together as really strong evidence against the installation of that pipe.
And any fond insights or stories that you remember about collecting kōrero at that time?
There was many. Sorry, I was just having a bit of a laugh about some of it. Some of it was just real funny stories. Some of our kaumātua and what they remember, and then some of it was actually the names of people who we put on the evidence. Yeah, so we had people who submitted evidence, including one of our dogs.
And what happened?
Yeah, and it got filed. So, I always reflect on that, which was quite funny, because you had everyone have all this evidence, and then we had one of the whānau pets who was also named and who opposed.
And in terms of the humorous side of the mahi that was being done, you know, are there stories you want to share that you felt, oh, this was a great icebreaker, this put everything into context?
Yeah, for sure. I think when I reflect back on it, that kind of really instilled a massive passion around, particularly for the Raupatu. So that was probably, I shifted from obviously doing all the work and research, and we just needed all hands on deck to actually prepare our evidence and gather information to support the action against the, water care hearing. So when I reflect on that, that was a really good insight. And I think the rationale around the litigation and why, and, as part of the gathering of evidence, having that as a real good record, we can reflect on that, and we've got that historical record of all of those tupuna and those kaumātua who we now have in our archives and the collection of that, and they talk to when they were growing up as a young person, whether it's a young boy, young girl, and their relation and their connection to that whenua, those are all beautiful taonga now to be held. And so when you look at all of that and the work that was done there, that set a really good platform. I mean, we still have arguments with water care now. And, as a result of that work, I'm probably one of the few, I mean, there's a few of us, but one of the few rangatahi at that time who were there gathering all that evidence, and I can talk to that context now.
You absolutely can talk to that context. So I want to move you towards that period of time and how you came back into the iwi to lead the river team just before the river settlement. What was happening at the time?
Yeah, I think for me, because I actually, I can remember saying this to Robert, because at the time we were going through the changeover from the Tainui Māori Trust Board into the new settlement entity, which was awesome. We did a roadshow, we did all that kind of mahi. And I think for me, I was actually in Wellington. So I actually said to Sir Robert, I want to go out and get some other skill sets and learn about how that whole settlement process works. And there was a rationale to the madness, I think, just understanding the government processes and the policies so that we can remain in our advocacy, our voice around protecting the claims and also resolving the remaining outstanding claims. So for me it was, okay, go to Wellington, understand that. Although I went to the Māori Land Court, so he gave me a bit of stick about going to the Māori Land Court. He goes, why would you want to go to the Māori Land Court for? And I'm like, well, it's just a foot in the door, right? He goes, but our land's were Raupatu. So anyway, I always remember him saying that to me. Why would you want to go there for? We had Raupatu. You don't want to learn about the Māori Land Court. I said, well, there's a method to the madness. I'm trying to understand all those specialist courts and jurisdiction, but more importantly, the process, and the research and how you undertake some of that historical context. Anyway, I ended up going to the tribunal, and I became the registrar at the Waitangi Tribunal. And so at that time, Lady Dai Mahuta and Tuku Morgan were appointed as the co-negotiators for the settlement, and they wanted to bring a team together. So Dai and Shane actually come to Wellington and asked whether I'll come back and help on the river team. And so it took me a little bit of a while. They come back twice, and the reason why I was like, "Are we ready? Are we ready to go?" In terms of the mandate, has it been successful? And so at that point in time, are we ready to actually start the negotiations? And so I in her wisdom, because that is just Dai's way, said, "Good point, Don. I will come back to you once our mandate's gone through." The Crown has received their mandate. The tribe accepted their mandate, but they had to go through that process with the Crown to receive the mandate. And so she done that, come back to me again, and that's when I come home.
And when you came home, you had all this early skill set and mahi with the iwi, then went out to Wellington, learnt about the processes down there, and you were coming back to lead a river team and the research to move the river settlement forward.
Yes.
What did you see as your main task at that time, and how did you execute those responsibilities?
So I think for me it was, just doing the hard preparation, what's our strategy. So really sitting down with Ryan Taku around the vision. I had a lot of material to draw from with Sir Robert. He funnily enough, he already set the vision around what the settlement should look like and some of the types of arguments we should pull together to be able to help us prepare that. So it was a matter of retaining that. Again, with our old people, we were really lucky to make sure, they were the 18, really. They actually set the basis around the parameters of what those principles we need to adhere to. Our tupuna, our awa is a tupuna, our awa is a whole being. And so the challenge in front of us was how do we actually ensure that we can design a settlement that kept all of those principles intact. And, you had to have a look at the holistic approach. You had to have a look at, our ability to make decisions on our awa and reinserting the iwi back as the decision maker at place. All of those challenges were set through our negotiators and mostly our old people. And I guess our task was how do we come up with a plan, understand the system, and as our team said, always do your homework. Know the system better than the Crown team as you're negotiating, but actually come up with a plan that keeps those core principles intact.
As you were building the strategy alongside the negotiators to take the river settlement towards its negotiated conclusion, I want to kind of bring you back to your leadership skills and your style. How did you build the team to support the negotiations?
I think for me, just having a strong legal team. So one of the things that I found when I was working at the tribunal, you could see who the really good lawyers were. And I know that sounds really bad, but there's lawyers, but then there's actually really super smart lawyers, and through the tribunal process, you got to see the ones who worked really hard, the ones who really fought hard for their clients and for the iwi that they represented or the hapu that they represented, and who'd done their work. So part of that was talking with our existing legal team, so the Denise Henares, our Peter Rose, we had, and of course Shane, who were there. They were the ones that were actually part of our original team. But as Denise openly admitted, she said the taio and the river and water was not her strong skill set. She can help with the strategy, but we needed someone in that taio space. So my first point of call was actually identifying who would be also good as a legal counsel who can, complement our team, our existing legal team, who had really good context around the current treaty settlement context, but also freshwater and taio background and a really good knowledge of that. So that's how we got Kahui Legal and Jamie Ferguson. So Nathan Milner and I worked together. So now he's a judge, so I should say Judge Nathan Milner. He and I worked together at the Waitangi Tribunal, and he went to Kahui Legal to work, and so I reached out to him, knowing him, and Jamie ended up being our counsel. As a result of those connections, and Jamie brought a really strong lens around taio and freshwater and advocacy. So that was one part of the team. The other part of the team was actually going back to some of our grads, actually. So drawing on Tai. Tai was probably one of the first ones. Taipu Paki was probably one of the first ones that I asked to come and help. And he didn't hesitate. And actually, at the time, he was working for Willie Te Aho at IC Solutions. And I talked to Willie and I approached Willie and said, can you please let Taipu come back? And Willie just released him straight away. So there was no hesitation in being able to support what we were trying to do for the settlement. And it just grew from there. And the team that was already here, so we had some of our taio team, so Tim Manukau and Julian Williams were already here, so they automatically became part of our team.
And as you built the capacity of the team to be able to build the argument of the Waikato River settlement, what key learnings came out of the process of engaging with the iwi?
So it was actually there was a big chunk of time, there was a big piece of work. So we did draw on some others, like, Rangimā, and we actually got a science geek, which was Cherie Van Schrevendyke. I call them, and actually Rangima's a geek in her own right because she does a lot of work. So we drew on some of their experience. Ty's really good at, so one of the strengths Ty has is breaking down all the technical legal jargon and making it real simple for our whānau to be able to engage. Rangima just knows our whānau really, really well. And so, making sure that we're going out, when we're going to talk with our whānau, we actually understand from them what the issues that they face on the ground, and then what are our solutions, what kind of solutions do they offer up that we need to consider when we're negotiating or designing what the settlement framework's going to look like. So with all of that knowledge base, and I think with she just wanted to make sure our people were engaged and informed and updated. So we had a pretty great team in terms of pulling together, having different conversations with whānau. There was also the big political ones, which our old people really ran. So that was the inter-iwi, because obviously when we looked at our settlement, our awa is a tupuna, so you can't cover it up. So we had to look at an approach where we had to go the whole river. And so that meant talking with all the river iwi across boundaries. And so a lot of our old people really led those conversations and around our whakapapa, our connection, the importance of actually keeping our principles intact. And so we had the support from Tūwhare Tō, Ngāti Tau, Ngāti Whāua, and then we come through with, Raukawa Maniapoto and ourselves. So there was a lot of work that was done in that time around the engagement. And just the engagement alone, and that was just our own people. Then we had the public, because obviously our awa is one of the most commercially utilised rivers in the country, in terms of the users, in terms of the commercial value.
Do you think that the river settlement following the Raupatu settlement smoothed the way in terms of public education and knowledge of the settlement process?
I think it was definitely a different time. Like when I recall back in the 95, there was a lot of resistance because it was very much an unknown. So I guess, 10 years on, when we took on the river settlement, people at least had an idea around the settlement. I think it was still new though, because this had to do with a significant resource or taonga. But in people's eyes, it was a public resource. It was around water. So what does that actually mean? And I think, with that context, it also presented its challenges.
And do you think that the media portrayed what was trying to be achieved in the river settlement in a more informed way, or were they not helpful?
I think it was a bit of mixture, and I think there was a whole strategy in itself was around comms and just breaking it down what we were trying to do. And everyone got, health and wellbeing, we looked at Te Mana o Te Awa. When you look at Te Mana o Te Awa, it's, there's some real fundamental principles that sit underneath that. But everyone understood we want to be able to access clean, safe drinking water. We want to be able to swim in clean, safe drinking water. And everyone has a relationship. So, when you're talking about we want to be able to restore and protect the health and wellbeing of our people, got that really clearly. So there was no hesitation. And I think, when you give that kind of message and promote that type of comms, and actually we want to improve it. And the work that we've done leading up to that, in terms of some of the cases that we went to court, that water care case that I talked about, those were all steps that we can demonstrate we are there to advocate for the health and wellbeing of our awa. And so people actually saw that. You can link it all. This was not an overnight thing, right? We have been very consistent in our messaging around the importance of our awa and our relationship, but also around improving the water quality and the health and wellbeing of our tupuna.
If you were explaining Te Ture Whaimana and its purpose to the next generation, what would be the measure of success?
A measure of success is where everyone's celebrating our awa. Everyone has a relationship, whatever that looks like, whether you love swimming, whether we can gather kayaking, whether we're paddling, all of those relationships that we have and enjoy, everyone's celebrating our awa in their own unique way. And it's clean, it's abundant, and we can look at our feet in the water and we can see our toes. And it's not murky and muddy. that would be success in my mind.
I want to move us now to the other period of your time with the tribe, which is now, and as the CE. There's been a number of challenges and opportunities that you've had to steward through. What were the most significant challenges when you came into the role as CE?
There were a few. I think probably the biggest one, though, was our whānau, the voices from our whānau. We don't know what we're doing. What is, where's, a transparency, I think, in terms of the information. What are we spending our hard-earned port for settlement pūtea, on the work, where is it going and what are we doing with it? So that was one of the big challenges that I came into the role. I think the other one is just, I think the desire, the change in the political landscape and the context, and us being able to pivot and adjust to some of that. And normally we're quite agile, but when I came into it, we kind of got stifled a little bit with some of the political context and the advocacy around that. And I think one of the other big challenges for us is, and dare I say it, I was lucky enough to go to Ngaitahu and spend some time with Ngaitahu. And one of the reasons I went there was how have they been able to grow their settlement a lot quicker than us? So one of the big challenges in my mind was, what are we doing, or what are we not doing enough of in terms of being able to increase our asset base and therefore our distribution and therefore our dividend that goes out to our people. So for me, there were a range of different challenges. And part of that was internal looking, some of it was external looking, but, they all kind of come together in one place. So, there was that challenge of we're not making enough pūtea, and even though we've got this big asset base and this, what we're saying is we've got this net worth, but how's that actually been translated to actually making a difference to the lives of our people? Have we moved? Is our settlement working the way it's supposed to be? The other one, are we doing enough internally to be able to set different expectations and wired and just drive our goals around that? And the other one was actually just being transparent with our people.
Our population is growing, isn't it, and we're younger.
Yeah.
In terms of the opportunity space, where do you think the most important focus and emphasis should be around our development approach?
I think for us, we're in a really unique position. As you pointed out, we've got a young population, so that's going to be, that should be our focus. It should be, our future generations and what that's going to look like. I think in terms of the opportunities for the iwi at the moment, there's many. And I think we're now global, we've probably reached a point, and we looked, globally when we were when we were looking at negotiations. A lot of our research was done on First Nations, as an Aboriginal context, as Indigenous people, who we were able to take the good and learn from that good and be able to design our own future. Now I think we're back to that point. It's like, where are those kind of global opportunities for our rangatahi into the future? Because actually that's the space. New Zealand, I think, with our current aspirations around being self-sufficient, what does that actually look like? It means being able to access clean, safe drinking water, so that drive hasn't changed. We want to be self-sufficient in a way that we can actually have our own energy and actually being able to grow our own food, kai, energy. Those are massive, I think, for the future. When you look at what that future is going to look like, how do we become self-sufficient? How do we do it in a way that we can actually ensure that our people are going to thrive into the future, regardless of what's happening around us?
You're a leader of a very complex organisation. It's a large organisation too. And leading the iwi towards the future that it wants, a mana motuhake vision. Does it require a certain skill set or a certain mindset to be able to help to navigate towards that aspiration?
I think for me, I think you have heart for what you do. Be passionate about why you're doing it and what drives you. Because if you're not there to support what our people what our people and the feedback from our people, then it's really difficult to be able to do your job and do it well. That's who we are supposed to be serving in terms of the work that we do. And I think for me, if you look at our history, everyone's just been able to fight really hard. And what was that benefit for? It was for the benefit of our people at the end of the day. So I think if we don't have that lens, you can have all the skills in the world, but if you don't have that lens and that focus, then it's hard to be able to, I think, achieve the outcomes that you want to achieve.
You've been growing from a very young woman now into a leader for the iwi, and have remained egoless in the task that you've undertaken to steward the tribe forward. You've had your first child and your first mokopuna over the duration of the period that you've served the iwi. I was wondering whether, on reflection, there are hopes and aspirations that you want to absolutely ensure remain consistent in this next push forward for the iwi. And what does that look and feel like for you?
Like I said, I think, just having that passion, that ability to, be really true to what we've been trying to achieve. And actually all the hard work and hard fought for, being able to have that fire in your belly. I always reflect on that, because I think that without that motivation, it's, again, really hard to be able to achieve the successes. I think with my daughter, with Amo, so, she was our baby. She did the round when we first established, when we were still engaging with our marae about what does our new settlement entity look like. And Amo was one of the babies in the car. And then, with the river settlement, my youngest one, and I can remember I go, his name has to be Awanui. I said, no. And Nan said, his name's got to be Raupatu. No, Nan. So his name's Matariki Te Whetū. So we ended up doing a completely different name. But, that's the wisdom of our whānau. So there's all those relationships and those connections. And just our history, I think I can't get away from that, because understanding that context and the drive and the vision and the hard fought for work, I always reflect on all those old people who did all the hard yards, and that helps set us up well to do my job.
But the name of your mokopuna is?
Te Awanui o Taikehu.
So those kaumata...
full circle. Well, kaumata knew something that we didn't know at that time. Mm.
Can I just ask you to reflect on the kaumata and the kuia that surrounded you and that you drew inspiration and guidance from? What were some of the lessons that you learnt under their watch?
Oh, there are many, where, just being able to have a really good download, being able to talk through some of the things, in terms of understanding and just really clarifying when we're talking about, key fundamental lessons, listening. The listening skills are really, really important. Having a laugh, because, you could have a really good laugh and have a joke about stuff and what went wrong, but then go, okay, we're not going to do that again, and this is what we need to do for next time. So being able to have those really open and honest debriefing and feedback, but also being able to access a lot of those old people. They were always available. Mm. They sacrificed so much, but they were always an open book, and they were very honest. If you wanted to really get a, good opinion, how did that go? Did you think the messaging was right or whatever? They gave that honest feedback. Mm. In terms of the negotiations, they were always there listening, observing, and again, very honest in their feedback and the debriefs, and they did not hesitate in being able to provide that. So we were lucky, like I said, we were lucky to have that, being surrounded by so many great people.
You made a comment earlier that the kaumātua were the A-team.
Yes.
Is there a moment where they inserted themselves in the mahi to actually change the course of direction of where things were going to go, but they said, no?
Yes.
Okay.
There were a few times. And I think that's the power of them being in the room listening, because they can pick that up. They were so good. I remember when we were actually negotiating here at the college around the river And there was a big conversation around the whole of the river approach. And the Crown were pushing back on it. Crown were going, oh no, we can't, it's going to be too much work to be able to bring all the other river iwi along. And so therefore we're going to stop you at Karapiro. And that's when the old people inserted themselves in the most amazing way possible and talked about why that's not our whole tupuna. You're cutting up the Crown, you're cutting up our tupuna into different parts. Regardless of boundaries that you see it, that is not how we view our whole of our river. And so they gave them a bit of a lesson, but that lesson set us up really well for the rest of the negotiations around finding a solution to ensure Te Manawa Te Awa as a whole, our tupuna as a whole, finding a solution to ensure that that principle remained intact.
What would you like to see moving forward in terms of key priorities for the iwi?
I think in key priorities, I really hope to be able to have access to what we had, I suppose, in terms of, what I've noticed and what I realise, and when I reflect on it, I look at our current team in the negotiations. They don't have the same access to those old people. And I think they've missed out as a result of that. I think, we could do a lot of, reflecting on what worked really well in the past. I think we don't do enough of the reflections. We kind of just move on to the next thing and go, go, go. So for me, reflecting on what worked really well, how do we take that forward? I think in the terms of the bigger scheme of things, like I said, the world's our oyster now. We've set up a really good base. I think with our recent announcement with Brookfield and that international partner, there's an opportunity for our rangatahi to go global, but go global from the context of knowing who you are and where you're from and being able to learn from others, but to come home and bring all that knowledge back to do well for whānau back home. And everyone can step into their own place. I really believe that the tribe has a role to play, but actually it's now how do we ensure that all of our communities are thriving and are well and are successful in their own right and are achieving the things that they want to achieve at place. Not just us as the iwi, being the centre, but actually our people leading their own mana motuaki, who are actually determining their own future at that place and who are being successful in their own right. Together, I think we're stronger in that way. So if we can, I think our next evolution is, tribe, I think, has done a bit of a role, but it's now time to let some stuff go and enable our people to be able to stand on their own 2 feet and lead that out for themselves.
That sounds to me like a plan for the next few years ahead around mana motuhake.
Absolutely.
And it's been a privilege to be able to get your voice in this story. In essence, if I could just share with you that we've arrived at this point and everything that I think our kaumātua would have wanted to see from growing our kids from young and then leading, you've pretty much all travelled that pathway. Yes, it's been in and out and all of that.
Yes.
But to have our young people now seeing that this is a valid pathway, you can go out of the iwi and come back in, go out and come back in. I think that's what you offer, is that lived experience. So have we arrived in a place where we can truly say, right, we've learnt everything, a whole heap, now we can move to the next phase?
Yeah, and like I said, I think, when we look at that vision, the role of the tribe hopefully is a little bit smaller. We're more the kind of, just the entity that brings everyone together every now and then, and to make sure that we are united and continue to be united. Because I think there's a power in that collectiveness. But like I said, I think the success will be how well we support all of our whānau at place and our marae. They're thriving, just like our relationship with our awa, where we can swim and connect with and participate, whether it's gathering kai or paddling. Same for our marae. They've got their businesses sort of, they're generating their own return. They're not relying on the tribe to distribute their annual dividend, for example, you know. So I think for me, if we can find a way where we are truly self-sufficient, and that could be from financial self-sufficiency right through to being able to have access to warm, safe, clean houses and water, clean, safe drinking water, all of those things that make our whānau thrive. But that's going to be the real challenge for us, is not having our people depend on the iwi to do stuff for them, but actually we're doing it for them ourselves. You know, are we courageous enough to be able to go, okay, maybe we need to think about it differently rather than just having grants. Is it a fund where whānau can actually,
A revolving loan or something.
Well, you know, an iwi saver.
An iwi saver.
And then the whānau can determine how they spend their money. It's their money, you know, but they've also contribute in. It could be anything we want it to be, I suppose. But doing it in a way that places those decisions back on whānau to make. Not us trying
Ownership.
to go. Yeah. But, you know, not us just going, here's a grant and here's a grant. You know, it means our whānau can make those choices for themselves.
Yeah.
They can build their house. They can go and get a house. They can send their kids to boarding school. They can send them to university, or they can use it for something else.
Yeah.
They can set up a business, build a business.
Yeah.
I think that's the courage we need to be able to change our mindset around how we do stuff. It's the how we do stuff.
Can I ask you to reflect on what your approach to succession planning has been and what you would like to see going forward for the next generation of iwi leaders?
I always say to our team, you know, understand our context, understand our history, because those are the things that actually, instill our passion for what it is we do. That's why we're here. Our settlements, understand those in and out, because actually we've got to protect those with all of our might, and particularly with this day and age, it's that. So, you know, for me, when I talk to our teams, and I'm actually going through a process now around training and understanding the context, understanding all of the redress, what was negotiated, how it was negotiated, why it was negotiated, and actually just so that they learn that in and out, because actually in all of the mahi that we do, we've got to make sure all of those things are upheld by practice. And so for me, those are the things that I really try and instill, because that's our Bible. That's our Bible. That's the thing that we can always draw back on. And, you know, that helps us with our positioning as an area about what we need to fight for and keep fighting for. So understanding that in and out, that's always my wheel to my team. The other thing is the work ethic. You know, for me, the other thing that I learned, and this is probably from Sir Robert, you know, you're there not only representing yourself and your whānau, but you're representing the whole tribe. So when you do stuff, you know, make sure that it's excellent. You know, always have your I's dotted and your T's crossed, and that's everything, you know, and what we do. So I've got a real bad habit of redlining stuff, which my team really hates, but I guess that's the expectation that you want to set, is those high standards of expectation, so that when we do stuff, we do it really, really well. When we engage with the Crown, we're really clear about what it is we want to achieve from that, and we're really clear about how it all links back to achieving the outcomes for our whānau.
Were you to, I guess, reflect on your journey and role within the iwi, what advice would you give to the younger Donna on reflection?
Oh gosh, that's a really good question. I think the big part that I've learnt, even in all of the work that I've done, is, you know, being able to have that courage to be able to just, you know, put a stake in the ground and just go for it. And be confident in yourself that it's going to be successful, because I think if you're going to achieve and you're going to have a go at stuff, you know, you can't look for all the support in the world to be able to make that happen. You've got to be able to have that also in your paku to be able to go, yep, I know this is the right thing to do, and let's go for it. So I think, you know, for me, it's, you know, and to be fair, that's exactly what the old people used to say. So that would be my message. I think the other piece is for our own people, like particularly people coming into the governance roles, we are much more complex, but we also need to look after each other. You know, everyone wants to do the same thing. They want to do what's right. They want to ensure that we're getting good outcomes for our whānau and that we're successful in whatever it is we're going to do. So for me, it's like we should be looking after each other to be able to support each other in their different spaces to be able to do that well and let people be successful and support them to be successful in that. We don't have to do it all. So I think for me, that's the other message is be kinder, be supportive, look after each other because actually it's not an easy job. The plan and the mission to be able to achieve great things for our people, we need everyone. It's not one person's job to do that, it's everyone's job. So I think for us, if we can do that well, we're going to be successful in whatever we do.
E whiti ana te rā, kei rungi a koe Donna me rā kōrero. Nō reira, ka nau te mihi atu ki a koe. Moto nā kaumahana ki tēnei kaumapati nā tātou. Kia ora. Oh, too much. Oh, also.